I don't know. We forgot to change the poop for a while, and like
And it just died.
it just died. Change the yeah. It was
Uh,
like a real it was like an in real life Tamagotchi that we didn't keep.
that's literally what it is, Brian. It's a real pet.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank you for having joined me over the course of this year. It's been a magical year, whether it's been one episode that you've listened in on or multiple, whether you've been here as a guest or a listener. I really appreciate this connection. I have loved being more involved in the Bitcoin community over the course of this year and meeting so many diverse and interesting and smart and capable and funny people. It's been an absolute joy. I wish you a hugely Merry Christmas. I'm taking some time off over the next couple of weeks. I've been in contact with Delio, who some of you may have met in your Bitcoin content meanderings, and he has ever so kindly offered to donate 2 of his episodes with Bitcoiners, getting to know them a little bit more personally. So I hope you enjoyed these couple of episodes over the next couple of weeks, and we'll be back in contact in the new year, back in connection with new episodes in January. I'll look forward to seeing you then, wishing you and your family and your friends and all those around you a really Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. All the best. Take care. This episode proudly brought to you by BitRefill, your one-stop shop for living on Bitcoin and Lightning and building out the Bitcoin economy and this Bitcoin world we would all love to see come to fruition. They've got all the best gift cards like Amazon, Apple, Bunnings, Airbnb, Uber, and much more. They've got Coles and Woolies for your groceries, bill fairies to pay your bills, BP and Ampol for your petrol. You can do your hotel bookings or top up your phone credit or buy a gift or phone credit for a friend or loved one overseas. So check them out today, bitrefill.com, and remember to put Bitcoin People in the referral code for 10% Bitcoin back on your first purchase.
I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and also a happy new year. We are now in 2024, and I think this is going to be one for the books. Before we get too much deeper into this exciting new year, I'm going to give you this chat that I had with Brian DeMint of the Orange Pill app and the book. I'm going to get the full title right here. Bitcoin Evangelism, Planting Seeds for the Decentralized Revolution. Now available on Amazon and many other bookstores, I think. I don't know. At least Amazon. You can get it there for sure. In that book, he explains how you can get people into Bitcoin and answers to questions that you might encounter. It's a way to orange pill people. That's the whole idea there. Well, I met Brian DeMint down at Pacific Bitcoin. I actually rolled with him jiu-jitsu style, so I know a bit more about him in a physical sense than most other people on this planet. Maybe his wife knows a little bit more. I hope she does. Anyhow, those are the kinds of things that you can expect in this conversation, because when I sat down with Peter Dunworth in the chat that you saw the other week, and now this one with Brian, I wasn't interested all that much in the whole Bitcoin side of things. I wanted to know more about who this individual was. How did you get from being a child and whatever that was like, and to who you are now, being an adult? I'm not asking questions about money and what's your saving strategy like. No, I'm asking things like, what kind of ice cream do you like? And is pineapple on pizza an acceptable topping? Things like that. Things about the individual. And the way I approach this is, are you Satoshi? And I don't believe that Brian DeMint is Satoshi, but hey, you never know. You can be the judge after you watch this. Enjoy. Today, I'm sitting down with Brian DeMint. He is Chief Propagandist Officer over at the Orange Pill app, the guy behind the marketing, and also the author of Bitcoin Evangelism, which is now available and been available for a little bit now on Amazon, and the Consensus Network, which is a publishing network. Brian, I'm here to find a little bit more about you and a whole lot less about Bitcoin. If Bitcoin comes up, great, that's cool. I'm sure it will here and there, but we're learning about you. So with that said, before we got recording, I said, make note of how much you want to talk about your family. So I imagine you've made some mental notes there of how much you want to reveal. But I would like to know where you started. Where did you grow up? I know that you're on the West Coast now. If you want to divulge more than that, you're more than welcome to. That's all I'll say, because that's pretty large space of land. And is that where you started life? And if not,
Yeah.
how did that come about?
Yeah, man. So my wife and I had a pretty lengthy talk when I was writing my book, because part of my story is where I come from. And so she agreed that she was good with me talking about where I was born and that sort of thing. as long as it's not where do we live now. So,
Mm.
I mean, I don't mind. I meet with Bitcoiners all the time. I'm on Orange Pill app, so it's actually not too hard to find me. You won't ever be able to pinpoint where I live, but you can find generally where I'm at because I like to make myself available. I think that that's part of like the Bitcoin economy is being able to have those connections and things like that. Like there's Bitcoiners that want to be in the shadows, and there's Bitcoiners that want to. I want to make myself as available as possible. Because that's how I am in business. Like with my stores, we want to make ourselves as available as possible to make the most friendships, the most economic connections and stuff like that. So I certainly don't mind sharing that. In my book, I actually share where I was born. I grew up. So my last name's Dement. It means from the family of coin minters. So there's probably like evil bankers in my background somewhere. I don't know if we're like on the evil or good side of this equation. But I grew up on Sovereign Way too. So I like it was a pretty cool thing as a kid asking, you always ask your parents dumb questions like, well, what does sovereign mean? What does sovereign mean?
It's not a dumb
And
question.
so,
It's a good
yeah,
question.
well, it's a annoying question for a parent that might not know what sovereign means, I guess, but my parents luckily did. So yeah, it was one of those things where I remember conversations around the dinner table about what is sovereignty, what is personal sovereignty. My dad was kind of a gold bug. My dad didn't end life so well, but when I was a kid, he ended up getting just a pretty actually on my ninth birthday got in a car accident, and then ended up getting hooked on opiates. So the latter half of my life, he was or of my developing years, kind of checked out and went down that rabbit hole and ended up dying of an opiate overdose. But before I was 9, he dude was on it. We talked about personal sovereignty, we talked about gold, we talked about sound money and those things. I remember as an 8-year-old, as a 7-year-old, having my parents discuss these types of things, personal sovereignty, what our last name means. And so it's funny, in my teen and like early 20 years, that stuff had kind of been lost on me. But when I started learning about Bitcoin, that's when these things started flooding back to me. Like, what? Like, I remember talking about sovereignty. Like, I had this unfair advantage as a kid. No matter what happened, like later in my childhood, I was really privileged to have some of those conversations early on to think about that. So I grew up in Riverside, California, and Sovereign Way. So if you guys ever if that's ever a security question on one of my things, you guys got a couple of the answers there. But yeah, man, I just felt super, super blessed to be, have that kind of circumstance of being in a family that found it necessary and prudent to actually discuss those things. And it was pretty fortunate that was the street I grew up on.
How were your parents in terms of their political leanings, and where would you say that you are? Let's say, I know it's hard to pinpoint and say exactly because a lot of people are like, well, I'm a little of this in certain areas and a little bit of this on this area. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, are you more in alignment with your parents' views or the other way?
That's a good question.
Whatever ways those are.
I would say I'm pretty in alignment probably with the way my parents were. They were kind of traditional Republican though,
Okay.
where I'm like conservative, but I'm like a registered libertarian. I think that's like probably had they understood the tenets of their beliefs, they probably would have been more in that camp. Or if there was a viable candidate, I think they were just more politically aligned because those were the candidates put forward and that type of thing. But what I will say was my dad, even though he was a party animal, like he was kind of a wild guy, like in his early years, kind of shaped up when he had kids, but then kind of got back into the wild side. But I think like when he was clear and sober minded, was much more kind of like leaning conservative. He was a businessman, and so he had kind of fiscally conservative ideas. My mom was. He was never a Christian. My mom was like in her childhood and then now later in life is a Christian. And so I think her conservative values were more out of like a religious leaning, where my dad's was like the business guy, conservative type of conservative leaning. But one thing that was really influential to me, my best friend, his mom was actually pretty strong, like liberal leaning kind of, she was a hippie from the 60s and that sort of thing, traditional liberal. And I remember my dad always saying, damn, Linda's a bleeding heart liberal. And I always remember thinking that, well, the thing that we were talking about, she had really good intentions. Like it was very clear that she cared for people. And I knew that my dad also cared for people. but he didn't just like give people money, but he employed a bunch of people. And like, we'd go to the company barbecue, and you'd see all these happy families, and these people that my father employed through his hard work and using his brains, and then division of labor with their hard work. And it was kind of this beautiful system. So I saw capitalism or industry at work and how it could provide for people. But then I saw the heart of our neighbor, who I don't think her policies that she would advocate for were the best to help people that were in need. But the heart that she had was this really beautiful thing. So I really like to align myself with this idea that capitalism really is bleeding heart capitalism. Like I think it's almost one of those things where capitalism is one of the greatest things to ever lift people out of poverty. But we're in an age where titles matter. You see things like Black Lives Matter and these things that captivate people's attention, whether there's any merit behind them or not. And so it's one of those things where when I talk to people, I'm like, you understand capitalism is like, really, that's where the bleeding hearts are. The people that truly understand capitalism realize that actually solves the problems of that liberal leaning neighbor. So as a child, my heart really gravitated towards the heart of my liberal neighbor. But I saw pragmatically in actual real life the benefits of division of labor, hard work, and industry as an ability, as a means to help people provide for their families. So it was this really cool juxtaposition where I found value, and I saw heart, and I saw good things in the liberal mindset, but I saw pragmatism in more of the conservative side.
Did you have was your family? You've mentioned your mom and dad a couple times now, and you haven't mentioned anything about divorce. So were you part of a family unit growing up, and did you have that good cohesive family for most of your childhood, all of your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, things were pretty solid up until that 9-year-old birthday, man. It was actually pretty sad. My dad was coming home early for my birthday, of all things. So that was kind of a bummer, and just got rear-ended by a big Mack truck, and just had surgery after surgery.
Was he at a stoplight or something, and the truck didn't stop?
I think he was on the freeway. I think it was like
okay.
stop and go traffic, and the truck didn't stop.
Gosh.
But man, he just had surgery after surgery, and like, doctors love to cut things off of you. Isn't it weird? It's like doctors, I mean, dude, just love to cut your foot off, love, to solve a diabetes problem.
Do they word it that way? I just love to get you in here to cut your foot off.
Yeah. No, I have a friend that's a podiatrist, and he's kind of a sicko, so I almost think he likes it. But anyways, don't go to him if you
I'm sure some do. I'm sure.
I won't name drop him. But anyways, all that to say, like, to your question about to my parents, I had a solid upbringing till then. And then even my mom, like, she was the one that tried to hold the family together, because everything that comes along with drug addiction was, I mean, I remember when I was 12, so a few years into kind of this degradation of my dad, he went from being the little league baseball coach to everybody respected, to when I was playing like major league and pony at that 12, 13-year-old age. I remember being embarrassed when I was catching the game, and then my dad would show up. He would show up just hammered, slammed, like slurring his words. I had other dads would come, hey, his name was Steve. Steve, maybe you should go home. And I'd hear these conversations like as I'm catching, because he's right behind the home plate and that sort of thing. And so it went from this this kind of utopic upbringing to this kind of just sloshed up one where my mom really tried to hold it together. But the degraded behavior goes to infidelity and stuff. And I remember we had to go get my dad one time. He was somewhere, as a motel or something like that. And the cop outside was just like, hey, just so you know, there was like a few basically ladies of the night that we had to get out of here. And so I remember seeing my mom, just like, she was still married to him. And imagine going and picking up your husband and being like, she's trying to do for her boy. She's trying to keep this family together. And, your husband was just here with a few prostitutes and doing some coke. Like, how does that make you feel? And to see the strength of her for that. And eventually they ended up, they got a legal separation. He ended up passing away and dying. She should have divorced him, because she ended up taking on a lot of debt. He had about $600,000 of gambling debt that he had racked up.
Was that a surprise to her? Was she like, wait, what?
She knew that he gambled, but she didn't know that he had that much, that he had gambled up that, or racked up that much debt. I mean, it was pretty astounding, because he'd gone to a bunch of Indian casinos and Vegas casinos. Man, we got hooked up every Christmas. every gift my dad gave was like something that the casino sent, but they were legit gifts. This is when like DVD players were like really expensive at the time. He'd give everybody a DVD players because MGM Grand, this is how much money he'd gambled. They would send them like a $700, $800 DVD player, like several of them, like different casinos were. So we were getting these legit gifts from them, but it turns out they were comp gifts, and we ended up paying probably hundreds of thousands of dollars per DVD player. But anyways, that was kind of this like hodgepodge, but people go one way or the other, man. I'm sure you've had all sorts of adversity in your life, and here you are today. And people either use that as an excuse to fail, or they use it as like motivation, like a whip crack to do better. And I have 4 kids now. I try to be a really good dad. I'm a messed up individual. Like I'm not always, I'm good. Sometimes I snap at my kids when I shouldn't, and that type of thing. Like sometimes the fuse wears a little too thin, but like I really try hard to be a good dad. And I think I'm grateful for the time and the pain and the suffering that that my mom endured, and that my family endured, because I think my kids benefit from that. I was just talking to my mom about that the other day, and she was kind of saying that same thing. She's like, man, I really think like everything we went through, your children and then the next generations are the beneficiaries of that. And that like brought a tear to my eye, because I was like, yeah, you know what? We hadn't talked about that in a while, but I think that is the blessing. I personally believe that God uses all things for good, no matter how bad they seem right now. There's something good to come out of it. What is it like? I know you're an MMA, BJJ kind of guy. Conor McGregor's famous for saying you either win or you learn, right? Like there's no losing. Like you either celebrate something great that's going on, or if you're in the midst of trial and adversity, like also celebrate that too, because you're being refined right now. Like that's just unquestionably, if you have the right mindset, if you're going to push through, you're going to be refined through whatever, trial you're in.
If you're willing to talk about it a little bit more, I'm curious about those years because it sounds like when all of this adversity happened I don't know, I guess that's putting it mildly, when you were 9 odd years old, were you old enough at that time? It's hard for me to put myself back into a 9-year-old self, but can you look back at that and go, I had enough of a conscious understanding of like, oh, I could look in a mirror and that's me and the world around me, that you could sort of see what was happening with your dad in a detached way to some degree that like a 4-year-old definitely couldn't? It would just be like, oh, this is disastrous. Because I imagine if that happens when you're 4 and then you see that, as you said, degradation, that falling apart over the next 5-ish odd years, and then you're 9 years old, I think that messes you up mentally, I'd assume. But if you're already 9, or let's say go to the other end of the extreme, you're 18, it's like, all right, I'm kind of already doing my own thing. Yeah, my dad's going down this rotten path, but 9 is sort of that, I don't know, it could go one way or another. What was that like for you watching this happen? And we're just like, oh, I see what's happening, or is it like, what is happening?
Yeah. I mean, I really didn't see like the hardcore stuff until I was probably that 12 or 13 age, but there was an awareness. I remember not fully grasping it at 9. I think it was a blessing that I was at least that old, because I was in that intermediary stage where I was able to process some of it. My mom and my older brother, I have a brother that's 6 years older. I'm sure that they shielded me from a lot of things like really early on. Yeah, man, I imagine if you grew up in that, if that's all you ever knew, then it would definitely jack with your mind. But I remember at probably 10 years old, so a little bit into it, we were driving to like, it was Thanksgiving at my grandma's house. And so my dad's driving, my brother's already out of the house at this point. So my dad's driving, my mom's in the passenger seat. Why she was letting him drive, I don't know. But I think it was one of those things where he'd pop a few pills before we were going to the family function. And like, he looked fine. But then 45 minutes later, by the time we get there, we ended up rear-ending a car like on the off ramp. It wasn't like a high speed one. It was like, we like my mom and I were in the passenger seats, and I'm in the back seat, and we see him not stopping. And it's like, you see this accident happening in slow motion, and you look over, and my dad's just like this, like just like asleep at the wheel, because he took this pills or whatever. And I remember at the time, so we hit it. It was very clear that like he had like fallen asleep at the wheel, and my mom, I remember her being really mad at him, like rightfully so. Like, why are you on drugs while you're driving the family?
Sure.
And I remember being like, Mom, no. He stopped in time. I don't think the brakes were working. So I remember trying to defend it because he wasn't the bad guy yet. By the time I was 13, he was the bad guy. I teen angst and all that kind of stuff. But at 10, 11, you're still like, he's my dad. He's my hero. He hasn't completely fallen into this yet. And so at that time, there was still very much this wrestling with, no, it wasn't his fault.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
type of thing.
yeah. What are some things that you mentioned being a father yourself? What are some things that you've learned from that, or that you look back, or are there things that you look back and you're like, ooh, I see my dad in that, and I like that, and I want to lean into it more, or the other way, I see my dad in that, I don't want to do that. What are some lessons that you've learned that you apply to your fathering life now?
Yeah. My dad died 17 years ago. So when I was 20, I'm 37 now. Um, and my mom, I've never, and even I think even when we were going through that stuff, I don't think I ever once heard my mom say anything bad
Hmm.
about my father. Never once, which is crazy. Like you think about all that, like the little things that people gossip about one another, like just small, like, oh, did you know he thought he was all that and that kind of thing. Like, no, he did the most heinous things to her and he never said anything bad. She would, if I ever asked, I would always try to get stuff out. I kind of wanted to know, like I knew how she felt, but I wanted to hear her say it sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
like, so mom, like what are the things that just really like bugged you about dad? Whether it was, I think most of these conversations happened after he died. And and she'd say, no, you know what? For all the things your dad was, he was always a good provider and he always cared for you guys. He always wanted to be your coach. And
Hmm.
it's like he was only my coach until I was 9 years old. And after that, he definitely fell off. But it's like she kind of like erased that part of it. And she, as my mother, she wanted to put this positive image. And I think she knew from before I even had my own kids that like those are the things that you need to take with you into fatherhood. So the things that when my wife congratulates me on or thanks me for, those are the things that really matter is when she says, you know what, thank you for being a provider for our family. And thank you for, I coach my kids in jujitsu and, snowboarding and pickleball and all these different things. Like I try to be the coach and I try to, coach them in different things too. And then my kids all know about Bitcoin. They all have they all have some sats that they've earned from chores and cold storage and stuff. Like the stewardship that I've given to my kids, like I find those things extra valuable. And I think that probably helped me not make an excuse for those other things. Like if my mom had ragged on my dad for being, oh, he's a loser, he was a drunk, he was a pill popper, he was all these things, then maybe somewhere in my mind it would have been acceptable to fail on that level. But she
Hmm.
just never like it was just like, no, we're just gonna forget about that side. Not that we're not gonna learn the lessons from it, but let's focus on the positive because if you're gonna be a father, you shouldn't carry this baggage with you into that. Let's just focus on the positive aspects. And so yeah, I mean for somebody to be cheated on and to be, I mean we can go into all these stories about when he was like he was just drugged down. He would call her on the phone and tell her, I want to kill you and blah, 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 blah. Like all these terrible things. For somebody to do all that stuff for you, to you, and then for you to turn around and just speak highly of that person, not fake. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't like
Hmm.
she said, oh, you know what? He's such a sweetheart. No, no, no. She didn't blow smoke. She wasn't saying things that weren't true. She just found the good in that individual. And that meant a lot to her son. And then that means a lot to her son as a father now, and that's really really helped me.
Does she still speak that positively of him in those memories in that time? Just like zero negative. Just we're just not even going to focus on that at all.
Never heard her say anything. Never
Huh.
heard her say anything bad. She's remarried now, and this awesome guy, cool guy. Love the dude, and yeah, just not like even when it's our own private conversation, not in front of the new husband or anything like that. Never said anything. She's even spoken positively about my dad in front of her new husband, not in a weird way or anything like that, but
Sure.
just like we're having conversation. Oh, remember when dad said this? And something from my childhood that was a good memory. And she would, indulge in the nice memory and that sort of thing. So it's a very, very good example of, I think, the character that I want to embody in the way that I talk about people and that sort of thing. And man, I'm not, I'm not as good as her, but I definitely, that's a good example for me.
Hmm. At these family dinners, I'm gonna get into one of these goofy questions here. Did you guys drink milk with dinner, or were you? What was the beverage at dinner?
Man, we're a raw milk family.
Okay.
So
Currently or always, even when you were a kid?
oh no, sorry, we're more currently. Yeah. No, we're a raw milk family now. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking of like these because we have these dinners now. But yeah, we're raw milk, baby. But no, dude, we used to be store bought fat free milk. ultra pasteurized and all that kind of stuff. But we drank milk with pasta, with pizza, whatever disgusting food that it wasn't supposed to go with. But yeah, we were milk drinkers.
What food is milk supposed to go with besides cereal? I
Oreos.
guess. Okay, Oreos.
Oreos.
Okay, sure. Cookies. Yeah. Okay. So that's a definite yes on the milk with dinner.
100%.
Okay. Were you guys? Was your family? And you can take this one either which way since you have a family now. But as most people came from some form of a family, so you can apply this to now or the past, to young Brian or adult Brian, whatever you want to do. Do you batteries in the fridge?
Never done batteries in the fridge.
Never
I feel
done
like
batteries in the fridge.
I don't want the battery acid to like leak into my lettuce or something, you know?
How would that even happen? I don't think it just shoots out and streams like a pop zit.
But do you know that for sure?
No, fair enough. I don't. I don't. Have you ever put ice in your? Or do you drink alcohol at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you put ice in your wine?
No. I feel like I gotta like DM Ben Justman about that and ask him like, dude, do you know what Del just asked me? He asked if I put ice in my wine. I know it's not incriminating you that you necessarily do that.
No. Some of these are yes for me and some of them are no. I've never put ice in my wine either.
Okay. Yeah. That seems really weird to me.
Yeah.
Backing up a second though, the way I answered that question, I feel like that makes me sound a little like an alkie. You were like, "Oh yeah, do you drink?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
Oh, let me tell you.
No, we indulge in a beverage or two now, but like I'm always the guy. I feel like I have street cred amongst my friends because I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu and I concealed carry a firearm. And, I feel like I do man stuff, right?
Okay.
And so when I drink an alcoholic beverage, I like something that's kind of girly. So like I'll drink
that's not where I thought it was going at all.
and I'll have an apple cider beer. And like, no matter how much man cred I think I have, it just never plays out that way. Like I'm always the butt of the joke because of like, and I feel like an apple cider ale, that sounds like something a Viking would drink.
Yeah.
And they're just
that one, sure.
They don't buy that at all. I don't know.
Okay.
What's your take on that? Apple cider ale?
I'm not a big cider guy. I don't like sweet things very much at all, no matter if it's a drink or a snack. I'm way more of a savory kind of person. So if I don't drink anymore, because my wife and I were trying to have or are trying to have children, and so we're like, hey, let's just lay off any alcohol just to help with that process. We're both a little bit older, so we need any edge that we can get in the whole process. Anyhow, my drink of choice would probably be if I went to a bar. It's a wedding. It's open bar. Drink whatever you want. I'm gonna pick a whiskey, something brown, or a scotch. I'm going for a scotch for sure. Yeah. Wine, sure, I like wine, but I'm definitely not picking any sort of like fruity cocktail or something. I might take a sip off of somebody's like, oh Trey, this is really good. Sure, I'll try it, but that's not what I'm going for.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm sure if you're in that phase where you guys are trying to get pregnant, you probably get some like unsolicited, really weird advice about the best ways to get pregnant. Is there any really weird advice you've gotten as far as what you should do?
None, because we don't share it. Like I'll mention it here and there, but like where I work, my day job, that nobody there has any idea. So if it were to happen and I were to say, hey, guess what? They'd be like, what? I didn't even know is this an accident? They'd be like, how, when, why? So yeah, it's just not, I don't know. Like I told you before we started recording, there's nothing that I say that I'm not okay with the rest of the world knowing, but that also comes with me mentioning certain things to certain people because I know that certain people have a tendency to talk to these groups and those groups, whatever. So I'm okay if the groups were to cross and be like, hey, do you know this about Del? And I wouldn't be like, no, you weren't supposed to know. Oh my God. But I'm not going out and sharing anything and everything with anybody and everybody. Next question here. Anyone in your family currently or in the past own a Dodge Neon?
No. No, I don't know.
No Dodge Neons. Okay.
No.
How about a guinea pig? Have you ever been a guinea pig family?
Yeah, we cycled through guinea pigs.
Through them.
We cycled through those poor guinea pigs when I was a kid.
What would happen to them? Raccoons?
I don't know. We forgot to change the poop for a while, and
and it just died.
It just died. Change the, yeah. It was like an in real life Tamagotchi that we didn't keep.
That's literally what it is, Brian. It's a real pet. You have to give it actual food.
We had the dropper, you give the water bottle and it has a little dropper.
Yeah.
So you're like, it's good for like, if I forget to feed it for a few days, like at least it's got water. Like humans can survive for 10 days without food. Guinea pigs can't survive 10 days without food.
Oh, I didn't know that, but it sounds like you learned firsthand experience there. And what was the longest guinea pig that you ever had? Did you ever see one die of like actual like, oh, he's getting old and gray? And no.
I don't even think they made it to their prime. Like these poor things. Yeah.
Oof. Jeez. What about pets now? You have a pet family now?
Not a huge pet. We have 2 dogs.
Okay.
But the dogs, we take good care of them. I feed them twice a day, every day. We give them good food. Don't worry. We learned that was my youth. Yeah. And I have 4 kids. Like they have chores. I delegate the responsibility.
When did you start giving your children? Because I'm trying to pick up little things here and there for if and when my wife and I do end up with some children, as though like I'm just gonna fall into whoa, what are you doing here, kiddo? Oh, what the heck happened? Children. Yeah. When did you start giving them chores? Like as soon as they can do anything, or once they're talking? Depends on the individual. How's that work?
Yeah, man, it's all like age appropriate. So I think like actual chores though, regimented weekly chores, it was probably when our oldest was 6 or 7.
Okay.
But now like our oldest, we have 2. I have a adopted son. So our 2 oldest are 3 months apart. They're 10, 7, and 5. When our 5-year-old, the youngest, when she was like 3, the others were already doing chores. So she was actually we ended up giving her chores, like age specific chores that were like easy, but they were things that were actually helpful. So in hindsight, we should have done it much earlier. It's just, you think that like, oh, kids can't do chores. I don't remember doing chores when I was 3. I don't remember doing chores when I was 4, but you think about the way that the brain of a 3-year-old works. If they're seeing older kids do it, then like, I want to do that too. So we use that to our advantage.
Well, that's just exactly what I was wondering, because you say you should have given the older ones chores sooner, but older children sooner chores. How much of the younger ones seeing not just, oh, my brothers are doing this, but also I'm seeing somebody that is more my size doing this. And so older brothers and sisters like, hey, we can help you out and show you exactly how to do this because you're not 6 foot, whatever, tall as dad. And dad's like, it's just super easy. You just reach in the cabinet. Like, well, we have to get chairs and stack a stool on the chair to do that. And then they can show each other their little tricks and tools of the trade.
No, I think that's a good point, because for them, it's like if, we have a Berkey water filter thing.
Same here. Love that thing.
Yeah, we gotta love the Berkey water filter. Where it's on the counter, and like for a long time, it wasn't super easy for the 5-year-old to get to it. But she could see her siblings, to your point, who were just a little bit bigger than her, getting to it, and so it became this big momentous moment when she could like officially get to it, at each step of the way. So yeah, I think there is kind of that incremental type of effect that happens. So I think there's probably a benefit to being one of the younger ones in the family. The first one, yeah, maybe the chores wouldn't have been a huge success had we tried them at 3 years old. But even then, thinking back to it, my 2 first biological children, they were 2 years apart, and so even though my oldest was 2 at the time, 2.5, like she kind of had some chores to help with her little baby sister. It was like, go entertain her, and like she could process like, oh, I need to be the entertainment for my sister right now. So at 2 years old, she would make silly faces and things like that. So you can give them tasks. Like, I wouldn't consider them paid chores, but like you kind of build them up with tasks, and then you move on to maybe more complex things.
Yeah. So on that, you've got 4 children. How important do you think it is for a child to have siblings? Because I know for a fact, and my wife and I have talked about this a lot, there's 0 chance, unless God intervenes and says, nope, you're only having one, that we want one child, because we've been around single children, and they're sometimes, once they get older and they've been around and socialized, they're okay. But in the younger years, they're oftentimes a little bit odd. And just, I don't want to be the only source of entertainment for my child either. I played a ton. I'm one of 5 children, and my brothers and I would just run around the deserts of Arizona and just go be wild kids out in the desert for hours and hours on end. And I imagine, I never asked her, but I imagine my mom and dad too were probably super thankful. So they're not just like, oh, we have this one child and we have to be there. You have literally no one else to play with if it's just you. So how do you have where am I trying to go with this is, how important is it for children to have siblings?
my personal opinion is it's very important. I really do think so. And not just like, I mean, you made a good point about having people to play with, and there's somebody that sets an example for how you play, and so
Yeah.
there's like this kind of this hierarchy, and anyways, I think that's all good. But then even how it changes us as parents when we have one child, everybody says that. Oh, when you have two children and they're at the playground and you're like the second kid's like doing a backflip off the jungle gym or whatever, and you always look, you're like, oh, they must be the second kid, right? Because you as a parent change. You're trying to put the kid in a bubble and you're trying to protect the first one. And so if you're an only child, your parents are going to treat you as the prized possession that they
Right.
cannot let anything bad happen to. But when you have two, and it's not that that's a bad strategy, it's a good parenting strategy to be more lax. Like the presence of multiple children actually makes you grow as a parent. I think any parent would say that, like, wow, me being such a stickler and so protective wasn't a good thing, but it really feels like that's the way that you're supposed to parent in the moment. But then, yeah, having multiple children, it forces you just cannot keep up that level of precaution with that many kids. So it
Yeah.
actually makes you probably better parents. And then I think it makes the kids have a little bit better environment too.
Yeah. Do you think that there's I mean, it depends on every unique situation, obviously, but do you think there's an ideal family number, like roughly? I don't, not six, and any more than that is a big problem. But like, do you think, like, I hear these families every once in a while they make a TV show out of them, it's like the 13 whatever. It's like, whoa, okay. Like, does that strike you as no? That's what I'd love to have 13 kids running around here.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's times when growing up, I grew up, everybody I knew had two, there was two kids. There was you know, they were one of two siblings. And so it was weird when you'd find a family that had four. Like that seemed like crazy to me. And so now having four, it doesn't feel that big. It definitely feels like we could have more kids. I personally I did the procedure to not allow myself to have kids anymore.
Okay, gotcha.
So got the old snip snip. But I mean, yeah, I would love to. My wife really would love to adopt more, and I think that the thing that we wrestle with though is we feel like we've been given a stewardship for our children, and so like they're placed in our care, in our responsibility. So yes, bringing on more children, it might be a net benefit to those new children like coming into this house, especially if they don't have a home, if they're in foster care or whatever. Like this would probably be a net benefit for them. How much of a net negative would that be for the children that we do have, and the child that we have adopted and placed, given him a home and that type of thing? Like where's the proper balance in that? So we actually wrestle with that all the time. And I don't really think we know. I think it's something that you have to pray on, you have to meditate on, whatever, you have to be introspective about your ability to handle that. But you don't always know the situation of the new kids, like the new kids that come in, or the new kid that comes into the mix, whether it's biological or adoptive. They could be the easiest kid in the world. They can make that. They could just be a net add or a net benefit add to everybody in the family, or they could be a distraction. They could be something that takes 80%, 90% of the parents' focus, and then these other 3 or 4 children, or there's going to be a distraction. So I would say that it has to be very family specific. It has to be based on what you guys feel like you can handle. But no matter what it is, man, I always tell people that share my worldviews. And now I'm not saying down to the T, but generally like freedom loving people, Bitcoiners in general, I say produce more than you and your spouse. Because we need to repopulate the world with people, with children that are being brought up in these types of families and households with these types of values, because I think that's one way you win. If you look back to the writings of some of the people from the 1960s and the depopulation movement, they were very aware back then that I think they called it the fundamentalist Christians at the time, but they said the fundamentalist Christians they're gonna outbreed us because we're really trying to incentivize people to not have kids. The people that are gonna listen to us are only the people that are going to listen to us. The people that don't listen to us are going to have a different ideology than us. And so it's eventually going to win. So yeah, if you want your ideology to win, then by all means, procreate.
Right. Okay, I've got one more thing that I want to ask about the family thing there. And I really don't like it when people ask, like, what's your number one? Because then the person that's getting the question is like, okay, is it that? No, I guess no, there's other things that's got to be number one. So instead of number one, what's literally anything that you see out and about where you go, oh, I know for a fact, like verifiable fact that I am a better parent because of this thing that you see other parents doing.
Oh my gosh. The hubris that we have as parents is like all over the place. We always think we're these genius parents. And then I'm sure when my kid's like 19, they're gonna be like, you were awful. But no,
At
man,
19, definitely. There's literally nothing that you could do. I keep on
they
saying
will for
literally, but most children, when they're 19, everything that you do is bad. Like,
that's true. No, I appreciate that. So I'll wait till they're 30 to get a
yeah, there
real
you go.
assessment.
There you go.
But no, we were just talking about this, my wife and I. Now, I think that I like to think that I have, I'm well thought on certain things, but I'm sure if I was a single dad, or if I was married to a woman who just was kind of easygoing on certain things like I am, I'm sure we'd be the people at the restaurant that would have the kids that have their own cell phone out, or they'd have an iPad out or something like that. But thank God for my wife, because she was just from the get-go, like raising our kids, it was like screen time is far and few between, and it's something that you earn. Like, we have a star system. Like, if you're going to get a 20-minute show, like, you got to earn it. And you can convert your star for stats if you want to stack some Bitcoin. Like, you literally would do that. My kids love stacking sats. It's actually they have a unit bias. So 1,000 sats is like a treasure to them. But they can get a show, and like, it's something that they have to earn. We were just at a restaurant the other night, and we knew it was going to be a while because this restaurant's kind of slow. And so we told our kids they could bring a book if they want to read. Even my 5-year-old brings a book to read. And the table next to us, there was these kids on these shows. And even with the screens, the kids a few minutes in are getting antsy. They're yelling. And so it's like, so even the crutch that these parents had, and again, this isn't like broad strokes. Maybe these kids have some this parenting style works for some kids than others, but it just seems like
iPad kids are weird.
I think so, and we get consistently parents that come up to us, again, not because of my good parenting, because my wife's good parenting. Almost every time we're out to dinner, I think most people see a family of 4 or a family of 6, but 4 kids walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is
here we go.
A lot of fun. Yeah. Yep. Especially if it's like a fancier restaurant. We almost always get like a granny that comes up to us at the end, like, I've never seen kids so well behaved, and yada, yada, yada. And it's because they're either sitting there talking and engaging with adults the whole time, and think about what kind of edification that's doing for their social skills. And then, or the other option is when we do let them bring something, it's a book. And then like, when it's time to put the book down, we talk about what they read, and that's part of the conversation. And like, it's this very much more like wholesome, more organic type of thing, where you have like this A/B testing thing that's going on. You have this group of kids that's just really well behaved at one table, and then you have the kids that I like to think that his name's Hunter, and he's got a shaved head and he's got sticky stuff all over his face. That's my name for every kid that's on an iPad. His name's Hunter, and he's got sticky stuff on his face.
Okay, yeah, and he smells like he maybe takes too many weird baths with bubble baths and like twice used water. Back to the goofy questions. Does anybody in your family have any flame tattoos?
My brother does. He's got the like tribal. He's got his own initials.
Oh wow!
Awesome.
What? Why?
Hilarious. From when he was 18.
Okay.
He's an idiot, dude. I love my brother. So aside from like all the stuff that my dad did, my brother was the guy that smoked when he was 12, and then my dad, like when he was still kind of on the ball, my dad made him smoke a whole pack of cigarettes. So I watched my brother do that. So I watched my brother throw up in the front yard. My brother was the kid that like got suspended from school for like doing stupid stuff, and he was the one that got the tattoo. And tattoos are rad, but he got such a stupid tattoo. I never got a tattoo, and I'm clean as a whistle. But yeah, he got the freaking the flame that wraps around the arm, and it's like an inch and a quarter thick.
Oh
it's just like, that's all it is.
Oh Lord. Yeah. Wow. He's like, can we do 3 inches? Like, well, that's $300. It's $100. Ah, shit. I've only got 150. Yeah, it's an inch and a half then.
So yeah, exactly.
Have you ever fallen through ice?
No, I've never fallen through ice, and that's actually like kind of a fear of mine. I was just telling you off air that I have a chain of wellness studios called Salt and Light, and so we do cold plunges there.
Okay.
And part of when you do a cold plunge that makes the process really like bearable, so that you can do it and it's actually like you feel good when you do it, is by breathing and like kind of meditating and having a clear mind. But sometimes I'll get this thought in my head of like this paranoia of like, what would it feel like if I fell through ice? And so when you're in cold water and then you get this paranoid state of, what if I fell into a frozen lake and I couldn't get out? you know, like I fell and then like I went under the ice and then
Yeah.
I couldn't get my way back out.
Or you're trying to get
It,
out and it keeps on breaking away.
yes. Oh, it jacks with you. So you cannot let yourself get into like that kind of negative flow state. It is horrible.
Have you ever tried to go, that is what I'm going to imagine. I'm going to imagine intentionally beforehand, before getting in. So it's not that the thought surprises you. And you're just like, oh, and you kind of get in there, but go, I'm going to imagine myself being trapped in ice when I do this today. And you prep yourself and then you go into it like, here we go. I'm falling into ice. And then you sink in and you're like, now I'm stuck here. And now what do I do?
Dude, that's a great, I'm for sure gonna do that now. Like that's never crossed my mind to go on the attack with that, because you hear these like special forces guys as opposed to just like regular infantry guys. You know, like PTSD is a lot lower prevalence in special forces guys versus like regular infantry. And they say that one of the reasons is because special forces guys are the ones that are doing the ambushing and infantry are the one that are being attacked. And so there is this kind of thing that changes the mindset of when you're the one going, even, I mean, special forces guys are choosing war. Like they're not choosing to avoid war. They're choosing war. Infantry guys, obviously they're in war. They understand the ramifications, but it's being brought on them as a surprise. So yeah, I think that when that thought sneaks up on me, that might be part of the power of why that makes you freak out. And just even kind of going for mental fortitude, then yeah, man, I like that. I'm gonna try that.
Curious. I'll tweet you, Twitter, DM, whatever, Xia message it, whatever the hell it's called these days on Twitter in a week or so, and if I remember, or if you do it, and then let me know. I'm curious. I mean, like, oh, I lost my mind and had to call the paramedics because I'd had an anxiety attack or something.
You broke me, dude. I'm never gonna be the same.
All right, on that same kind of trashy note, does anybody have any Looney Tunes apparel? Like a Taz leather jacket or something. Looney Tunes specifically, because that's definitely way more white trash than Disney. Disney's weird and you got problems, but Looney Tunes is full on. We know somebody that lives in a trailer and it's probably uncle.
You got it from Kmart, and Kmart's not even around
or
anymore.
Magic Mountain.
Or you got it from Magic Mountain. I'm pretty sure when I was a kid I had Looney Tunes stuff from Magic Mountain. That's funny that you say that, but I don't think any of our family, I think we've moved on from our Looney Tunes phase.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that kids are into now? Like what are the, like, are the Fortnite? Is it still into that?
I mean, I think kids are. I heard a grown ass man the other day say, he's 24 years old, saying he had to leave. We were having a workout and he had to hurry up and get to his Fortnite tournament or Fortnite. I'm like, that's fine. Like, that's okay that you do that. But like, we're doing man stuff right now. Like we're getting after it. And like, you're bailing on me for Fortnite. So that was a 24, 25-year-old man. And so I actually don't know. My kids don't play a whole lot of video games. We do have an Xbox. So we have an Xbox, whatever the new one is, Xbox X. So we have like a legit video game system, but like even that's earned. So we have like a snowboarding video game. We have a UFC video game. My 5-year-old, she's like, throw a head kick. You know, we do that kind of stuff. But yeah, as far as like the latest trends, I don't know. My kids are in the backyard doing flips on the trampoline right now. Right. So they're really into knitting. So I think my kids are from the 1840s.
Okay. Interesting. Knitting. How'd they get into that? Did they take it on themselves, or was that a wife like, hey, we're going to try this craft?
My kids are super into crafts. Like they you give them a gift card to Hobby Lobby and they freaking blow that place up. They love crafts. And so my son, the one who's adopted, I have 3 bio girls. We have one, our son's the adopted one. He was like this brilliant origamiist before he ever came to us. Like he can make the most extravagant origami things. And so that paired well. My kids were already into crafts. He was this origami nerd. And so, they get after it. I'll walk into a room. Like I walked into my girls' room last night for all 3 of them. We have an extra room. They all want to stay in the same bedroom. They turned their room into a rainforest. There's like swinging monkeys. They make everything out of paper or like different crafts and stuff. And it's all like linked up to the door. So when you open the door, it like sets in motion all these different things that go on in the room. My kids are such nerds and it's amazing. Like they build the craziest stuff. Yeah.
Huh. Neat. I like it. Have you ever been kicked off the go-karts? That's assuming you've ridden go-karts, obviously.
Yeah. No. So I did because at Fiesta Village, if you spin out and then you start going backwards, they don't like that.
Oh, okay. Was that intentional that you did that, or did it just happen and you're like, I didn't mean to?
No, I was trying to Tokyo drift because I was trying to win the race, but I knew as soon as I spun backwards, I'm like, screw this, like I'm not going to win now. So I'm
Mm.
like, they told us not to drive backwards, and I think I was 16 at the time, 15 at the time, or something like that. So I'm like, my friends will think I'm cool if I drive backwards. I'm about to be a bad boy right now, and yeah,
Why didn't they want you to drive backwards? It's just that's the rules, whatever.
head-on collisions.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
It was a
Oh,
circle
you didn't
track.
mean drive backwards like you're going in reverse,
Oh
looking
no,
over your
no,
shoulder. You
I
mean you're
spun
going the
out.
wrong way around the track.
I spun a 180 on the track, and so I was driving backwards. It was
I
pretty
see.
sketchy. I see what.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Have you ever do you own anything, or have you ever owned anything decorated with bottle caps or in bottle caps, made from bottle caps?
Never. And I hope that someday I do though. That's something to aspire to.
Have you ever been run over by a car?
I've been bumped into in the parking lot a few times.
Hmm.
My fault. My fault. When I'm in the parking lot, I'm a little spacey, maybe on the phone a little too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
like to think that I'm a busy businessman, so my head's down on my phone. But I've been bumped by cars going backwards twice in the last like 2 years.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Just a little. You were walking and just a little boop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they felt like they needed to apologize. I felt like an idiot though, so I felt like it was my fault. But no, I've never been like run over.
Run over by a car. Okay. Have you ever sparked up a cigarette in a gym parking lot after a workout?
Nope, can't say I do. That would be a pretty boss move though. I could appreciate that.
When did you start jujitsu?
I mean, first time I ever got on the mats was like 14, 15 years ago.
Okay.
But then as growing up, I was kind of into boxing and Muay Thai. Um, I I had done some Muay Thai for a while, and then I was sparring with guys like Dan Henderson. I was sparring with these really high level MMA guys. I was actually I got to mimic John Jones when he fought Dominic Reyes. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that fight a few years ago. So I was Dominic Reyes's round 4 and round 5 sparring partner for John Jones
Huh.
for that, which is ironic because he actually lost round 4 and 5. So I think it was a bad training partner. But anyway, so like I was able to spar with really high level pros because I was pretty proficient at Muay Thai and I'm tall.
Hmm.
But I learned jujitsu. I took a few MMA fights early on when I was a white belt in jujitsu because I thought, oh, I'm just going to knock everybody out. Like I'm going to piece these dudes up. Nope. Exactly what happened at UFC 1, where like the strikers get taken down and just get manhandled. Like I didn't get beat up, but I have an 0-2 amateur MMA record
Hmm.
because I was a white belt and I went up against purple belts. I would piece them up the first round. I broke one dude's nose. I head kicked him, dropped him, all this kind of stuff, but I didn't put him away.
Hmm.
And so the second and third rounds of both of my fights, I would have the dude bleeding. He'd be, the doctors would come in and ask him if he wants to continue after the first round. The second 2 rounds, they would come out and just grapple me and freaking dry hump me for the next 2 rounds.
Hmm.
And that actually made me fall in love with jujitsu. It's kind of funny to say a man dry humping me made me fall in love with jujitsu, but I had been training jujitsu at that point. But the realization that I was like, they were a little bit better than me at jujitsu, or maybe like a pretty decent amount. I was way better than them at striking,
Hmm.
but being a little bit better at jujitsu was more important than being way better at striking.
Yeah.
And so that was like this kind of realization moment that my Muay Thai is literally irrelevant if I don't know how to grapple, if I don't know how to, block the takedown and or stuff the takedown and then get back up, or even be a threat off my back and that sort of thing. So I fell in love and started training jiu-jitsu 6 days a week. That was probably 9 years ago that I
Hmm.
started training really hard. So yeah.
Would you agree or disagree with this statement? And the statement is this: you can learn more about somebody in 30 seconds, a minute on the mat, than you can after a month of talking to them online.
I agree. I do agree. You can learn certain things about them.
Sure.
I'm not going to learn what color they like or anything like that. But I'm going to learn something about their character and their determination. I mean, you could really find out real quick because you're going to be, you can get smoked in 30 seconds. You can get very tired in even 30 seconds of grappling with somebody. And you usually find out about 30 seconds in of like, if this person's maybe going to beat you or not, if they're going to be a handful, if this is going to be an even match. You can find that out pretty quickly. You and I got to have a little bit of a grappling bout. It was kind of a, low key thing at Pacific Bitcoin. But I got to say, man, I was really impressed. And I found out a lot about you. It's funny because I've listened to many of your shows. I feel like I often listen to you on my drive home at the end of the day and stuff. I'm like, I kind of know who Del is. I feel like I had a different level of respect for you. I already admired you for what you do and your mind and that sort of thing. But like, there's just something about when you put your hands on a man and like, I don't know, I'm a black belt. I don't know if you told me your rank. I think you said you're a white belt with a couple stripes.
One stripe, yeah.
With one stripe. So I figured that like, okay, this is going to be a pretty easy round. I'm probably 3 weight classes or 4 weight classes bigger than you. I thought, okay, like here's this guy that's like kind of internet famous and he's a Bitcoiner. Like I'm gonna have my way with him. And it wasn't going very well at the very beginning, so I had to put on the afterburners to try and catch you. And that like it really makes you respect somebody of like, wow, this man is he's anti-fragile. And like I know I'm borrowing a Bitcoiner term, but I use that term in jiu-jitsu all the time. Like seeing another man that's anti-fragile, that's not easily broken, is a really impressive feat. To me, I think it's an impressive thing to a lot of people. Is like, wow, like this guy's not going to go down without a fight. So yeah, there was a lot of a different level of respect from that.
Yeah, rolling is an absolute blast. I was really bummed. Well, 2 things bummed me out: how hot those damn mats were. That's all good. It was a surprise. But yeah, when some of us were over waiting on the side of like, we're starting to put it together. We're like, black mats, sun's out, it's a little warm. This is going to be interesting. It's whatever. Once we got the water on there, it was honestly fine. But the other thing that I was a little disappointed about, I mean, none of us really had, I don't think maybe even you had any idea of what it was really going to look like. It's just like, hey, we've got half an hour here, 20 minutes or whatever it is. We're been askering. That's the main thing. We want to get some advice and tie it into Bitcoin. So let's see how this goes. But I know I was talking to a couple of guys. They're like, when are we going to get to roll?
Yeah. Yeah, you weren't wanting to like show up to get an arm drag seminar, right? Like you wanted to, I want to see if I can choke out.
Yeah, just kind of like I guess in a way, kind of what I hadn't even thought of this until just now, but meet other Bitcoiners in a deeper way. I guess it's like, oh, okay, you really are. Like, there's people that talk some good game, and it doesn't really mean anything, and I guess that's kind of where I was going. And it was just a question that popped into my mind about knowing somebody. But now that I'm kind of talking aloud and kind of figuring out as I go along here, I don't see a lot of people boasting or saying a bunch of stuff like, oh, I'm the greatest online on Twitter. I know there is that, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of that in Bitcoin Twitter. But there is still a certain amount of arrogance that comes from people, whether they intend it or not, of like, oh, I know this macro stuff. I know these things. And they might not even say, I know this. They just say it in a way that implies that they do, because they on their profile, they say, working as financial blah, 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 head of something or whatever. But then if you were to get on the mats with, I'd imagine just like most people, like, I don't know how many people have even been on a mat at all, but it's something like not most people, like 99.9% of the world's population has never done anything jiu-jitsu related at all. But once you do get on the mats and you start to realize that you need to have some humility, that you have absolutely no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Like the amount of people, and I've learned this firsthand, truly firsthand 2 times in where I live. So I live in a larger city in the Pacific Northwest, and it is there. You've probably seen pictures out of this city where it looks like the zombie apocalypse. And these people come into the store that I work at on a regular basis, and we're keeping our eyes on them because all they want to do is steal stuff. And after years of dealing with these morons, hoopleheads is what we call them, we know what we're looking for. It's like profiling. Yeah, goddamn right, we're profiling. Like when you come in, your head's high and down, and we ask you, "Oh, can we help you find anything?" I'm just looking around. You're picking at the scabs covering your face, like you're probably trying to steal something. Anyhow, we had one guy try and run out with something. One guy threw his weight into him, and I was like, "Here we go. Let's see how this works." I got on his back, and I had him in a rear naked choke in about 30 seconds. And the guy had he tried to fight. He tried to put up a fight, but he had no idea what to do.
No answer.
Absolutely zero idea. And I was wearing work boots and everything, and I still got him in a full on seatbelt. And I was like, it's night time, and I have video of this. I can send it to you if you want. I say it's night time, and this is like a week or two after Daniel Penny, and my bosses are like, no, Del, no. They didn't want a dead hooplehead there. But I was like, okay. And I had enough wherewithal where I wasn't so adrenaline pumped where I was like, you're going to fucking sleep.
Yeah.
And then it happened about a month later where a guy ran out of there. I chased after him. It didn't end up on the ground. We were out on the street, but I got him into, I don't even know what you call it, but it was like a double Nelson and just dragged him to the ground. And those two situations made me go, like, I think a guy more often than a woman is going to wonder, can I handle myself when like if it actually mattered, like if things act, and I know for a fucking fact now that I can, having experienced it twice. Have you ever been in a situation where that's been tested and you know for a fact, like being a black belt is enough of a fact, but have you ever been tested like in a real world situation and you can walk around with a little bit more confidence now because of that?
Yeah, I mean, so I remember early on when I was a kid, before I trained jiu-jitsu at all, I remember that absolute feeling of helplessness. I was on a date with it was like a double date type of situation. It was with a girl I was dating, my buddy, and like the girl that he was with. And we were at Dairy Queen eating some ice cream, and this guy that's like on PCP or whatever, giant black dude, probably, you know, whatever, 6'4", something like that, huge, yoked up, his shirt's off, and he's just going around telling everybody, he's like, you call me the N-word? You call me the N-word? And I remember he
unprovoked. He's just walking up saying this.
He was just going to different people and saying it, and then sure enough, he comes over to us. And I remember just like keeping my head down, and like that was probably the right answer. Be like, no, man, we're not messing with you.
Nobody has said that.
But I remember thinking that like, if he slaps one of these girls or something like that right now, like I'm gonna try and fight him, but I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. It was like this really helpless feeling of, I'll go. Like I think like I really felt like I was gonna try and step up to the plate, but I might have just been fodder while they got away. Like that was gonna be the best case scenario. You know, maybe there's some honor in that perhaps, but I certainly wasn't gonna.
It's better than pushing the girl in front of me like, I'm out of here. Good luck.
Ya. But then I remember a while later, when I was training jiu-jitsu, I think it was maybe a blue belt at the time. I was out in front of I was at the front of one of my stores. And I'm having a meeting with one of my store managers, and she's like, hey, look out in the parking lot. And there's this dude in the front seat of his car. Just he had his girlfriend or wife or whatever by the hair, and they were just in their car, and he's just slugging her, and she's like hitting him back and all this stuff. So I go over to the car and I bang on the window, and they don't stop. I'm like, okay, I was hoping that you were going to stop. Like somebody's watching you guys fight. Yeah. And so then I go to the driver's side. I open the door. I go to grab him to pull him out, but he's wearing sweat. So I just like totally bare ass him. I just grab his pants and just rip him down to around his ankles. So he doesn't come out of the car, and he's still hitting her. So like another person's grabbing him and he's still hitting her. Like apparently
has he said anything to you at this point? Like
nobody's saying anything at this point.
Okay.
And but I think they're in such a scuffle because she's like she's swinging back. I think she had rings on or something like that. So I think he got cut up a little bit. But so then I grab him by the leg and kind of leg drag him out of the car. He falls down flat on his face. And when he flips over, he goes, whoa. And I step back. I'm like, hey, man, it's cool. And every cop that I've talked to says, that's where you messed up. He's like, you disengaged and you went from alpha to trying to like de-escalate the situation when you still needed to be alpha. So as soon as he realized, I think at first he thought I was a cop. I think he thought a cop dragged him out of the car.
I see.
And then once he realized like, oh, it's just a dude and the guy's backing off, he goes, oh yeah, I got a gun. And so so I don't know. Like, do I jump on him? Like, I don't know if it's on his person.
I mean, he doesn't have pants on at this point. And you're like, I don't see a gun.
It's like could be in his coat pocket or whatever.
Okay.
And so sure enough,
did he have any pants on, or did you get?
So he had his boxer. He's not
okay.
He's not balls hanging out or anything like that. No, he. I think he maybe.
You'd be like, you look down, like, yeah, but it's not that big.
just like totally de-escalate the situation. He's like, oh, you're right. No.
Oh, you got me, man. Oh shit, that's what we were fighting about.
But no, he goes and like you hear about every domestic violence situation, like the wife turns on you or whatever. He turns to her and he goes, pop my trunk. And so she goes in and like flips the trunk unlock from the thing.
Oh, no.
And so then like by this point, I was like an idiot and I de-escalated the situation. Or I thought I was de-escalating the situation because I was backing off. So then like he runs to his trunk. And so then like high book. So there was these moments in life. And so my story is no, like that's actually moments of powerlessness have been what I ended up running away. I remember I like ran like a serpentine pattern. So like, I
Yeah,
remember thinking
bobbing
as
and
I'm
weaving like,
running,
oh
I'm
shit.
like, I'm going to get shot in the back. What is this going to feel like? And so I scurry off, and then they my employee said like he chased me for a second with the gun, like he pulled the
Oh,
gun
he
out,
actually
like
did get
he
one.
actually had a
Oh
gun
wow,
and
shit.
ran after me. But then like as soon as I ran off, he's like, okay, like they get in the car, she gets in the car with him, and then they drive off.
And now they're doing great.
And
Like
then yeah,
that brought us together.
Moral of the story. It was the crypto
I
couple.
saved
No, I'm
that
just kidding.
marriage. Yeah, yeah. It was Walker and Carla.
Oh, don't say that. But so I just okay. So all that to say is like no, like I'm not the hero of the story. Like it was these moments of powerlessness. Even once I started training, like I felt like I was powerful. I disengaged the situation and all that kind of stuff. But then like still didn't have like the tactical wherewithal to fully grasp the gravity of the situation, what I needed to do to be in the situation, and that sort of thing. So man, it's all on a giant learning curve for me. And I feel like I'm a little bit more mentally prepared now, but it was this big realization that you never know what you're getting into until you're in that situation. And just to have your eyes wide open and just to be able to process everything in that moment. And so, no, I was not the hero of the situation. I've never been able to use jiu-jitsu in this like heroic way. But it makes me train a heck of a lot harder because of the times that I've either failed or felt like a coward because of that circumstance.
Yeah, yeah. Jiu-jitsu, even still though, like I'm sure it. So do you train people at the gym you go to, or are you just a student at the gym?
So I train people out of my house. We
Oh,
during
okay.
COVID. So the gym I go to is about 45 minutes away from where I live. During COVID, we started training kids. No kids were in sports, so we said, hey, if you guys don't mind a little, a little personal contact, you guys, send all the neighborhood kids over, kids from church and all that kind of stuff. They came
Mm.
over. So we have like 30 kids in my garage 2 days
Oh,
a week.
geez.
We have mats that go down the driveway, and then all the dads started wanting to stay afterwards too. So we do like 2 classes on Mondays and
Okay, that's
Wednesdays
cool. So they're like,
with
I
the
want to
kids and
learn
the
some
dads.
of this stuff
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And so
very
my
cool.
coach kind of gave his blessing. So it's kind of like an extension of what he does from his gym. So I'll take my
Okay,
guys to open mats, and we'll go train at the big gym every once in a while and stuff like
nice.
that. But it's a little whiles away. So yeah.
Um,
Dill, I do got to bounce
okay.
in a minute here. So sorry, I know I was the late one.
No
So
worries, no
sorry about
worries.
that.
So I'll wrap up. I'll wrap up here. So I've run into new people. Obviously, you've got these people that have absolutely no idea. First day on the mats ever. What is that like? Watching somebody go from having no idea, like I don't know what is even happening to me right now, to I've been here for even 5 classes, and I know what's happening, and I know to keep my my elbows in and not again. What is it like watching that and seeing that happen? Is that rewarding?
Super rewarding. I mean, to see people kind of empowered that they're getting it. But I think most guys, sorry, my kids are all inside now.
It's all
They're
good.
done flipping in the trampoline, so it's wartime. But the biggest thing that you see from these guys is they don't see themselves getting any better until
Mm,
new people come into the class. Because when they come in, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if they know 0 techniques and like everybody else knows 5 techniques, but everybody else is learning 1 more technique per
yeah, yeah,
class, everybody's still 5 techniques ahead of them. So they never they're just like, wow, for the last 2 months, I have not gotten better. I tell them, wait till the next
yeah,
new guy comes in, wait till the next new guy comes in. And then they see it. Then they see, oh, well, I have 5 or 6 or 10 techniques. This guy has 0. Wow, I feel like a boss now. And that's the time where they really get it. They're like, oh, this was me 6 months ago. So if I fought myself 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago, I would beat myself up from 6 months ago. My 6 month ago self would have no chance against me right now. And
yep.
that's why I tell people, start jujitsu, man. If you're not doing jujitsu, the biggest explosion you have at getting better is in the first year. Like you
Hmm.
increase every single class you go to. Your skill level increases every single class you go to. As you get better, when you get to purple belt level, it's about incremental change and you're fine tuning things. And it's like less satisfying to do that. But when you start out, it's an explosion of just, wow, I didn't understand that this worked with this. And then it's like opening up Pandora's box of all these wonderful things that happen. And then also, I think jiu-jitsu, and you talk to anybody that trains jiu-jitsu, things like the Bitcoin volatility makes sense to jujitsu people because Bitcoin, your jujitsu experience is super volatile. You'll go into class some days and you'll feel like you can beat anybody in the world. You're like, wow, everything was flowing. I'm a white belt, but I was tapping out blue belts today, or I swept a purple belt. Man, like I'm the man. I figured out jujitsu. Like we just think that sometimes. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, wow, I lost to the guy that I've never lost to in a round, or this guy swept me, or the new guy beat me, or this new wrestler showed up and it was his first day of jiu-jitsu ever, and he took me down 4 times. Well, never mind, he was like a Division II wrestler, but like I'm better at jiu-jitsu, or I've been doing it for longer. And so you get these humbling days, and you get these days where you think you're like God's gift to jiu-jitsu. And so it's really important to just remember you're never as good as you think you are on the good days. And honestly, you're never as bad as you are on the bad days. Like we think we really suck sometimes, and we think we're really good sometimes, but the answer is we're kind of in the middle. like we're cruising along, but guess what? Like the chart goes kind of incrementally up and to the left. There's all sorts of squiggles in the middle. And so I think that, I mean, it's like the perfect allegory for like Bitcoin volatility, but really it's about a low time preference. When you get into jiu-jitsu, you know you're not going to get your black belt probably in less than like 7 years. If you're super fast, you're going to get your black belt in 7 years. I don't know that many people that get it in 7 years. It's usually 10 years. It was like a solid 10 years for me. I think that going in with a low time preference mindset is super helpful for jiu-jitsu, and just realizing like how you feel today is not indicative of actually where you actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Brian, for stopping by. I know you've got things and busyness to get to, so I will wish you well on whatever adventures the rest of your day holds. And thanks again for stopping by. This was fun.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Del.
Yeah, bye.